Hello friends, I am Oleksandr Palii, Ukrainian historian. Today I will tell you about military glory of ancient Ukraine. You will find out why enemies preferred not to touch Scythia for centuries and why Greek historian Thucydides called the Scythians the strongest not only in Europe but also in Asia. My previous lecture on the history of Ukraine, see on my YouTube channel.
By the 6th century BC, Persia, now Iran, became the most powerful state in the ancient world, having conquered Lydia, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and a part of India. Persia became the first superpower of the world simultaneously on 3 continents: Asia, Europe, and Africa. The army of the Persian Emperor Darius I invaded Scythia in 513 BC. Herodotus wrote about 700,000 Persian soldiers, not counting ship crews, and 600 ships. Bridges were built over the Bosporus Strait and the lower Danube for the Persians. In response to a demand of surrender, the Scythians sent a bird, a frog, a mouse, and 5 arrows to the Persian king. This signified, according to the historian, unless you take to the air like a bird, to the earth like a mouse, or to the water like a frog, you will become the victim of the Scythian arrows. The Scythians initially retreated before the Persian army, driving away their cattle, filling wells with earth, and burning the steppe. In southern Ukraine, there are still place names associated with Darius I and his campaign, Dariavi Mist and Dariavi Brid. The Persians advanced all the way to the Don River. However, overwhelmed by the victorious heroism of the Scythians, the Persian king fled during a decisive battle, leaving the wounded behind. It turned out that the world's biggest superpower could not wage war against Scythia with impunity. Pursuing the enemy, the Scythian army reached the Bosporus and the Dardanelles. The Scythians made a pact against Persians with Sparta, the most powerful Greek state at the time. According to Herodotus, the Spartan king became drunk during negotiations with the Scythians because he drank, together with envoys, pure wine, while the Greek custom was to dilute wine with water. Since then, the Greeks said, "Pour in the Scythian style," when they drank undiluted wine. In 334 BC, the Macedonian king Alexander the Great started his military campaign, advancing to the east. He defeated the huge army of the Persian Empire, taking the Persian royal family captive, subjugated Asia Minor, Phoenicia, Palestine, Syria, and Egypt, and was preparing to go to India. Alexander ordered Zopyrion, his governor in Thrace, the territory of modern Bulgaria, to go and help along the northern coast of the Black Sea. The Macedonians planned to conquer the Scythians and the Greek city of Olbia, now in Mykolaiv Oblast. Zopyrion's 30,000-strong army besieged the city, but was unable to take it, with the Scythians in the rear. As the Macedonian army retreated, it was defeated by the Scythians near the Dniester estuary. At the time, it was the only defeat of the invincible Macedonia. The Scythian state survived until the 4th century AD. Later, the Scythians dissolved among related peoples, the Sarmatians and the Slavs. States that later emerged in the territory of Ukraine, the Hun Empire and Kievan Rus, considered themselves to be successors of Great Scythia. Since the 7th century BC, people originating from the Greek cities of Asia Minor, mainly from the city of Miletus, now in Turkey, started to widely settle in what is now Ukraine. They were driven from Greece by poverty and overpopulation. The population of all Greek cities and villages in Ukraine at their peak exceeded 200,000 people. The largest Greek city in Ukraine was Olbia, with a population of 20,000 to 25,000. The other major cities were Chersonesus Taurica, Tiras, and Panticapaeum. In the 5th century BC, Greek cities in the eastern Crimea founded the Bosporan kingdom, which existed for 8 centuries. Greek cities at different times depended on the Scythians, minted their coins, and were their allies, but sometimes they were enemies to them. In particular, Chersonesus Taurica, not willing to pay tribute to the Scythians, resorted to support from the Roman Empire for protection in the 2nd century BC, and the Romans were driven out of the Crimea only in the 3rd century AD. The Bosporan kingdom was ruled by royal dynasties of Sarmatian origin for several hundred years. Interestingly, the trident, which was common in the Bosporan kingdom, became the family sign of the great Kievan princes from the Scandinavian Rurik dynasty and is now Ukraine's national emblem. Tridents were used in the Bosporan kingdom to mark the king's property, including tiles from the royal workshops. The majority of Greek cities in the territory of Ukraine were conquered by the Hun Empire in the 4th and 5th centuries AD and fell into decline. In contrast, Chersonesus Taurica, Korsun in Ukrainian, was seized by Prince Volodymyr the Great of Kiev only in 988 AD and finally collapsed under Tatar attacks in the 14th century. The Sarmatians started coming from beyond the Don River to settle in what is now Ukraine in the 3rd IJ century BC. The ancestors of both the Sarmatians and Scythians moved east from the territory of Ukraine in the middle of the 2nd millennium BC, but later returned. The name Sarmatian means girded with a sword in Indo-Iranian languages. Greeks even said that Sarmatians were under women's control because of numerous female military units and the great power of their queens. Greeks called Sarmatian female warriors Amazons. They were as good fighters as men were, and in some cases even better, because they weighed less and were better carried by horses. The Sarmatians invented the military tactics of heavily armored cavalry, cataphracts, which was the first European precursor of the medieval knights. The Roman historian Tacitus called them the best horsemen in the world. At first, the Sarmatians attacked Scythian defense fortifications, but later made peace with them. Starting in the 2nd century BC, a large resettlement began among the Scythians and the Slavs, to the west of the Dnipro, in the basins of the Ros, Rosava, Tiasmin rivers, and all the way to the Carpathian Mountains. The Romans called the Carpathians Sarmatian Mountains from the 1st to the 4th century AD. Initially, Sarmatians were nomads and lived in horse-drawn carts. Soon, however, the poorest of Sarmatians, and later the entire Sarmatian population of the Ukrainian forest steppe, became agricultural. The most militant Sarmatian tribe, the Roxolani, settled along the middle Dnipro. Sarmatians received income from the export of commodities, especially crops, to the Greek cities on the northern coast of the Black Sea. The Sarmatians played a prominent role in the creation of the Ukrainian ethnos as they interacted with the Slavs within the Antian, Slavic Sarmatian, tribal union. The name Russes most likely comes from the name of the Sarmatian tribe Roxolani. Initially, the Russes people actually were the remaining Roxolani who settled on an island between the Dnipro, the Ros, and Tiasmin rivers in ancient times. In the 9th and 10th centuries, Arab and Persian travelers found some purely Sarmatian features in the Rus culture: the cult of the sword, the prevalence of wide trousers, charivari, and hats with a pointed end, which were later popular among Ukrainians, the name Zhupan for chieftains, and so on. The Ukrainian Cossacks traced their origin and name back to the Roxolani. Rox meant clear, transparent in Sarmatian. The Sarmatians made fine jewelry and weapons decorated with precious stones. The Sarmatian polychromous jewelry art style spread throughout medieval Europe. Some of their chieftains had their heads tied up in childhood to achieve their noble elongation. The Sarmatians participated in countless historical events. They attacked, and Byzantium, settled in the Balkans together with the Slavs, were Rome's mercenaries in Britain, and founded joint states with Germanic tribes, with the Goths in Spain, and with the Vandals in Africa. However, the Sarmatians were divided into many separate tribes and eventually dissolved among various peoples. Some Sarmatian tribes, the Alans, existed in Sloboda, Ukraine, and in the Crimea until the Mongol invasion in the 13th century.